Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take your chosen sources and extract the key knowledge you need, quickly and thoroughly.
Because we know you, our learner, want to get informed without feeling overwhelmed.
For this deep dive, we're tackling excerpts from Finance in the Good Society, our mission. To understand the role of finance in society, maybe cut through some common misunderstandings.
Yeah, there are quite a few of those.
And explore how smart financial innovation could actually, potentially, build a better future.
That's right. And the author dives straight into this tension, this public perception issue.
Right.
There's this widespread feeling that finance is almost like a conspiracy against ordinary folks,
Yeah, you hear that a lot.
instead of seeing it as something constructive. But, well, the author argues that while manipulation definitely happens sometimes,
Sure, it does.
it's a mistake to just assume that's the whole picture.
Okay.
And what's interesting is this deep distrust seems, well, more common among the general public than maybe among people who review books on finance.
Huh. So maybe a gap in understanding.
Possibly. Suggests a broader societal misunderstanding, perhaps.
So the initial insight for you, our learner, is really recognizing that this negative view is out there. It's common, but it's important to look deeper to see the author's point that it's not necessarily all bad all the time.
Exactly. And the book itself seems aimed at shifting that view, to start a new conversation.
Especially in education.
Yes, particularly in places like universities, business schools. The author really wants to foster an ongoing dialogue there.
Makes sense. Kind of rethinking how we teach it.
Precisely. There's a strong call to weave in discussions about ethics, sociology, things beyond just the numbers.
Especially after the financial crisis, I imagine.
Oh, definitely. The hope is that by doing this, by creating a more socially aware approach, financial innovation can be a genuine force for good, making the world not just richer, maybe, but actually better.
And this whole financial system, it's not fixed, right? No. The author calls it an evolving invention.
That's a key phrase. It implies we can shape it, guide it.
Okay.
And the book introduces this concept of financial capitalism.
What's that exactly?
It's where finance isn't just, serving other industries. It's kind of leading the way, a driving force itself.
Oh.
And that period after 2007, the second great contraction, really shook people's faith in that system.
Understandably.
So the argument is that financial capitalism needs, well, an upgrade. It needs to be expanded, democratized.
More inclusive.
Exactly. More human-centered, giving everyone a fair shot at participating, access to clear information.
And the tools to actually use the system intelligently.
Right, instead of feeling like it's rigged against them.
This idea of humanizing finance. It seems linked to the potential of innovation then.
Absolutely. It's not just about creating, the next fancy trading algorithm.
Oh, right.
It's about developing tools that actually address real human needs and taking into account how we actually behave.
Behavioral economics comes in here?
Yeah, definitely. Understanding those psychological factors, the biases, the ways we're not always perfectly rational, that's crucial for designing better financial solutions. The author sees this as a key way to maybe tackle economic inequality, too.
And the 2008 crisis looms large here, doesn't it? Like a case study.
A huge case study. The author uses it to show just how vulnerable the system can be.
Takes us through the timeline.
Yeah, it starts with falling U.S. home prices back in 2006. Then the subprime mortgage mess really hitting in 2007.
And those new financial products related to subprime loans got a lot of the blame.
They did initially, but the problem was it didn't stop there. It spread.
Right, the contagion effect.
Exactly. Real estate values dropped pretty much everywhere. Financial institutions started collapsing globally. It was serious.
The comparisons to the Great Depression, serious.
They were yeah. And then you had the European sovereign debt crisis following on its heels.
So a key takeaway here for you, learner, is that financial innovation, while it can be good,
it also carries real risks if it's not managed carefully.
And the response since then, has it been bold enough?
Well, the author suggests maybe not. There's been a lot of focus on preventing bailouts, reducing debt.
Which are important, sure.
Of course. But maybe less focus on confidently innovating to fix the underlying structural problems.
So innovation needs to be guided. By what principles?
Stewardship, that's the word the author uses. Carefully managing society's assets.
And building ethics into the culture.
Right. Across all the different financial professions. It's like Adam Smith looking at tariffs, understanding the big picture can lead to positive change. But right now,
there's fear.
Yeah, fear seems to be holding back some potentially big, useful financial inventions. The author argues the crisis wasn't just greed,
But structural issues, too.
deep-seated structural weaknesses, exactly.
But there is potential for positive change, given technology and everything.
Oh, definitely. The information revolution, all the economic experiments happening globally, that creates huge opportunities.
For what kinds of things?
Better safeguards against depressions, maybe new kinds of insurance so people can take productive risks without fearing ruin.
And ways to tackle inequality.
Yes, innovative financial approaches to reduce economic inequality. That's a big theme.
So when we say finance, it's really broader than just stocks and bonds.
Much broader. The author defines it as like the architecture we build to reach our goals.
That's structure for getting things done.
Exactly. And managing the resources needed. Finance serves goals that come from society. It's not just about making money itself.
So the better aligned finance is with society's goals.
The stronger the society.
Yep.
Think about funding a lab, building a university, a subway system. Finance provides that framework.
And successful finance, the kind that helps everyone, needs constant innovation.
It demands it, yeah, for a truly good society.
Which brings up the question, which financial activities are actually productive in that sense?
Right. The author acknowledges that, yeah, some people in finance are clearly productive, evaluating businesses, directing capital.
Others?
Others, maybe less so. Like intense short-term market timing or pushing complex products that might not be truly beneficial.
There's a statistic mentioned about guarding.
Yeah, a surprising comparison between the share of the workforce in security or guarding roles versus finance makes you think about what we value, what we protect.
And innovating in finance seems harder to protect, legally speaking.
Yeah.
Patenting financial ideas.
Oh, that's tricky. Really tricky. It's hard to prove a financial patent works like you can test a physical invention.
Because it interacts with the whole economy and people.
Exactly. And human behavior over time. Plus, there's often controversy, questions about originality, especially for ideas not based on complex software.
Okay, let's shift to the people. CEOs. Their pay is always a hot topic.
Always. The author explains the basic rationale, stock options, etc., are meant to align the CEO's interests with the company's success.
Make them want the company to do well.
That's the idea. But the level and structure of that pay are constantly debated. And then there's moral hazard.
Especially for the really big companies.
Right, the too big to fail idea. If a CEO thinks they'll get bailed out anyway, they might take excessive risks.
Unlike, say, venture capital.
Yeah, venture capitalists watch their CEOs closely. They can replace them easily. It's a different model of accountability.
So the hope is for more sensible pay structures and better public understanding.
That seems to be the author's hope, yeah, for greater acceptance.
Another big debate. Beating the market. Investment managers promise it.
But the efficient markets theory throws cold water on that, doesn't it?
It suggests prices already reflect all information, making it super hard to consistently outperform.
Right, so those claims might be, well, misleading sometimes.
But the author doesn't dismiss investment managers entirely.
No, not at all. Basic diversification, like you get from mutual funds, is still valuable for many people. But you have to be wary of the extreme view that managers provide no service.
And the risk that they prioritize fees over client interests.
That's a real concern. Investing things that look stable but are actually risky just to keep fees coming in.
It's interesting, though. You don't hear the same beating the market criticism aimed at, say, bankers making loan decisions.
That is interesting. Why the difference? Maybe because banks operate in less volatile markets traditionally.
And they have that long history.
That long tradition of solving financial problems. The word bank itself, from the Italian banca, bench, it's different from the modern safe image.
And they manage that moral hazard issue in lending.
Crucially, yes, evaluating borrowers, monitoring loans, especially vital where public information is scarce, though maybe less so now in developed economies with more data available.
Okay, what about investment bankers? What's their role beyond just trading?
Well, historically, setting up joint stock companies wasn't easy. Needed special charters. And while some see share trading as just gambling,
The pecking order theory.
right, suggests companies try other funding first. But sometimes issuing new stock is necessary for big capital needs or for employee incentives.
And that process can be complex, contentious.
Oh, definitely. Fierce battles sometimes. Investment bankers are framed almost as, like, diplomats here.
Diplomats, how so?
Negotiating understanding, smoothing the path for corporate progress, resolving conflicts around things like new share issues.
Okay, let's talk mortgages again. Securitization. That process was central to the crisis.
Absolutely central. Taking mortgages, bundling them, selling them off as securities.
An invention of.
Actually pioneered by U.S. government agencies. Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae.
But the risk level in those mortgages grew over time.
Substantially, leading up to the crisis. And it's a puzzle why this securitization model became so dominant compared to banks just holding the mortgages themselves.
It wasn't a global phenomenon without U.S. government backing.
Not really, no. And there was this element of regulatory arbitrage.
Meaning?
Banks could basically reduce the capital they were required to hold by selling off mortgages as securities, sometimes even buying back the supposedly safest parts.
Clever, but risky.
Very. While regulations are improving now, the benefits of securitization, like maybe lower borrowing costs?
They were kind of invisible to most people.
Yeah, but the defects became incredibly visible during the crisis. Like repackaging IOUs, if the originals are bad, the whole package tanks.
The author even connects finance to our brains, the dopamine system.
Yeah, it's an interesting analogy, how our brain registers rewards. It's similar to how the stock market reacts to good news, like a dividend announcement.
Price goes up, signaling value.
Right. It reflects this fundamental reward mechanism that's active in financial markets.
But creating new markets seems tough. They often lack activity.
That's often the case. Things like prediction markets, they struggle with low volume, liquidity, they seem niche.
Yet, market makers try.
Yeah, the people who commit to buying and selling, they often seem genuinely invested in making these new markets work, not just making a quick buck, but it's risky for them.
And the public is often skeptical.
Very skeptical, worried it just creates new ways for bad actors to play games.
But the author questions that logic.
Yeah.
If we accept stock markets,
why not markets for GDP, for instance, since company profits are part of GDP anyway? The point is, trading creates a reward system, coordinates activity.
Like the brain's reward system.
Exactly. And IT gives us new ways to coordinate things better. Financial trading should evolve too.
The crisis was fundamentally about risk management failure.
Primarily, yes, not just moral failings. And expanding trading smartly could actually democratize finance, make it more responsive.
Let's look at insurance. How has that evolved?
Well, insurers have tried tackling farm risks for ages, crop insurance, weather insurance.
Weather insurance got better with technology.
Much better, yeah, thanks to tech and agricultural science.
What about future insurance markets?
The author sees potential for things like insuring your career income or broader insurance for long-term illness.
Though things like long-term care insurance haven't really taken off.
No, the take-up is low, which shows we need financial innovation to figure out why and overcome those barriers.
And even in rich countries, things like home equity insurance are still needed.
Still needed, yeah. Or livelihood insurance. Lots of gaps remain.
You mentioned market designers and financial engineers earlier. Can you elaborate?
Sure. Market designers tackle price discovery. How do buyers and sellers efficiently find each other and agree on a price?
Like a sophisticated matchmaking service.
Kind of, yeah. Especially with lots of possibilities. Financial engineers are more like traditional engineers, using technical skills to build complex financial solutions.
Okay, derivatives, often seen as villains.
They get a bad rap, but the author defines them simply. Their value is derived from something else, not inherently good or evil.
And the people involved are often
Involved in the really creative, sophisticated parts of finance. The author uses the ancient Thales story.
the olive presses.
Right, to show how options can be rational for both sides. The seller gets a sure payment, the buyer gets potential upside.
But we don't use derivatives for all our risks.
Not even close, only a tiny fraction. We don't have big markets for derivatives on GDP or wage rates, for example.
Behavioral finance suggests some options trading might be irrational.
Yeah, driven by how things are framed, maybe misunderstandings. The lesson is our financial system isn't finished. It can likely be improved.
Even without perfect math theories.
Right. And while regulators like FINRA try to keep things ethical,
It's hard to ban subtly misleading arguments.
very hard.
Beyond the tech roles, lawyers and advisors are still key.
Absolutely crucial. Integrity matters, even with robo-advisors. The author even argues for subsidizing human advice for people with modest means.
And lawyers are fundamental.
Totally. They write the contracts. All financial devices rely on legal structures.
So lack of legal access hurts financial participation.
It really can. And good advisors help people understand theory, evaluate products beyond just what's popular. Though advisors weren't perfect in the crisis either.
Lobbyists. often viewed negatively.
Yeah, usually seen as just serving the rich. But the author suggests maybe they're sometimes more public-spirited. They need to understand policy debates.
But do the positives outweigh the negatives?
That's the debate. There are examples of lobbying successes, but are they always good for society? Lobbyists aren't all powerful, though. Look at tariffs. They were reduced despite lobbying against it.
And current concerns might lead to limits on financial lobbying.
That seems likely. Yeah, a process is probably starting.
Regulators, often forgotten, but vital.
Fundamentally important. They set the rules. Like referees in sports businesses generally want fair rules.
So they don't feel forced into shady practices to compete.
Exactly. Now, regulators make mistakes, sure. Madoff, for example. But those can be corrected.
The author defends them somewhat.
Challenges the common criticisms, suggests they're often well-meaning, effective, shares a positive personal anecdote about the SEC.
And regulation can be a rewarding career.
Beyond just money, yes. But we need to give regulators resources, respect, appreciation.
Accountants and auditors, too. More than just number crunchers.
Definitely. Key role in stewardship, protecting information, upholding standards. They face a moral challenge, though.
How so?
Clients want to look honest, but might not always be honest. Accountants see that deceptive side of human nature.
And educators are central to the whole system.
Absolutely central. Fostering understanding of finance's origins, practices, purpose, and business education enriches universities overall.
Finance education has become more rigorous.
Yes, more mathematical, empirical, worthy of a liberal education. Colleges are where future leaders first grapple with business theory and ethics.
What about public goods financiers?
Well, most people don't just dream up new public goods. Think of the Postal Service transformative.
Private markets don't always provide those.
Often not adequately. The RFC during the Depression is cited as a success seeking private sector ideas for public benefit. We need more effective strategies here.
Policymakers also have a huge role in stabilization.
Essential given the boom-bust tendency of financial capitalism, they have a duty to counteract instability.
Though even the big institutions miss things, like the lead up to 2008.
They did. And central banks aren't enough. Fiscal policy, government tax, and spending is crucial too. Pump priming.
We need better institutions to manage crisis risks.
Yes, and maybe innovative instruments like GDP-linked shares to help governments manage debt in downturns.
The growth of nonprofits signals something important too.
Absolutely. It shows people have purposes beyond just profit. True nonprofits are already a huge sector.
And profits get reinvested in the mission.
Right, which can create a stronger sense of idealism within the organization.
Philanthropy is another piece of this puzzle. What happens to great wealth?
Eventually, the wealthy have to decide what to do with it. Carnegie's Gospel of Wealth argued that fortune makers are best suited to manage philanthropy.
Is that always true?
It's debated, and most of the super rich have ties to finance through their large businesses, often specialized knowledge, deal-making skills.
Not necessarily groundbreaking artists or thinkers.
Rarely, according to the author's look at the Forbes 400.
There's often resentment towards that level of wealth, isn't there?
Widespread skepticism, yeah. Akerlof's theory about dominant groups maintaining status comes up. Think of historical caste systems.
Contrast that with someone like FDR.
Right. Privileged background, but didn't see himself as super rich and pushed policies to democratize finance.
So a good financial system needs outlets for different human drives.
Both aggression and altruism, yes. We need a system that accounts for diverse motives, allows complex deals, but channels conflict peacefully, continuously improving, democratic.
The author even sees beauty in financial theory, like math.
Yeah, linked to symmetry, like the appeal of symmetrical faces.
Yeah.
Financial concepts like CAPM or Modigliani-Miller show these underlying conservation laws, transformations of value. It has an elegance.
It contrasts sharply with the struggles of artists like Whitman.
Definitely. Highlights the financial challenges faced when pursuing ideals outside the mainstream market, or someone like Jerry Rubin moving from activism to Wall Street context matters.
Uncertainty and risk-taking seem baked into us.
Schultz's research suggests our brains reward dealing with uncertainty. An evolutionary edge, maybe? Explains gambling, speculation.
And sensation-seeking.
That personality trait, restlessness, seeking excitement, correlates with risk-taking, maybe entrepreneurship.
If financial innovation can be so useful, why is it sometimes slow?
Several reasons. Perceived risks of new things, regulatory bureaucracy, the free rider problem, and educating the public about complex tools.
And sometimes just changing the name helps.
Reframing can be powerful. Mutual fund caught on after investment fund didn't. Resistance to things like inflation-adjusted mortgages shows how wording matters. Small changes, big impact.
There's also a tension between our sense of rights and financial reality.
Yeah, traditional ideas of human rights, while vital, can sometimes clash with financial practicalities because of how they're framed. The word right is powerful.
Debt and leverage. Ancient tools, but dangerous.
Been around forever for funding things, but always carry that risk of failure, liquidation. Think WWI reparations.
We're more aware of leverage risk now, post-crisis.
More aware, yes, but a reliable fix hasn't really emerged. Better procedures, better instruments are needed, not just more rules.
What about that perception of sleaziness in finance?
It's a common impression. Maybe some prioritize short-term gain over purpose. Think of casinos designed to lower risk aversion.
Cognitive dissonance plays a role.
Could be. Rationalizing actions to maintain self-image can lead to errors, or what looks like sleaze, like the home prices never fall, belief.
But finance also attracts people who value truth.
Yes, people troubled by hypocrisy who challenge conventions. It's not monolithic.
Assessing moral purpose in finance is hard.
Very hard. The fine moral tally often isn't clear until the end of a life. No easy scorecard. Think of the Rockefellers' complex motives.
And wealth equals power, social status.
Often, yes. Power, conspicuous consumption. Maybe linked to deeper social and status-seeking impulses.
Okay, efficient markets hypothesis. Foundational but limited.
Core idea. Prices reflect information due to competition. Difficulty forecasting prices seen as proof.
Early research supported that.
Yes, especially with all the price data available. But maybe the difficulty of short-run trading shouldn't have been surprising. Profitable strategies get copied fast.
So maybe it led to overconfidence in market perfection.
Possibly. Overlooking emotional, social factors. Questioning if participants really process all info logically.
Animal spirits fill that gap, irrational waves.
Exactly. Optimism, pessimism driving fluctuations. Psychological feedback loops amplifying booms and busts. Gartner's idea about hypomanic immigrants contributing to business dynamism is related.
Limited liability also encourages investment.
Reduces risk for shareholders, yes. But the shift away from partnerships and investment banking raised concerns about less personal responsibility, maybe more careless speculation.
Speculative bubbles seem to happen again and again.
History is littered with them. Even before stock markets, newspapers made them more visible.
Betting against them is risky.
Very risky. Hard to prove a bubble while you're in it. And bubbles aren't just market phenomena. Think Soviet collectivization, China's great leap forward. Intense, disastrous investment cycles.
Even WWI framed as a kind of bubble.
A feedback loop nobody could stop. Lederer noted society becoming community, intensifying the loop.
But there's progress towards global cooperation.
Yeah.
Like the UN, G20.
Yes, the author sees these as positive steps, building on centuries of progress towards a good society framework.
Circling back to the super rich and finance.
If you define finance broadly, markets, deal-making and big business, then yes, most Forbes 400 types are deeply involved.
Specialized knowledge, but not necessarily other kinds of genius.
Often, yes. And finance might keep producing these super rich without policy changes. Deal-making amplifies individual power significantly.
How can policy address that inequality?
Historically, things like sumptuary laws didn't work well. Estate taxes are seen as potentially more effective for fairness, despite conflict with inheritance desires.
A broader societal principle on inequality is needed.
To guide tax policy more systematically, yes.
Could encouraging charitable giving help humanize finance?
The author thinks so. Tax laws could make giving more rewarding, psychologically affirming. Simplifying deductions, maybe automatic reporting by charities.
What about participation nonprofits?
Where donors benefit directly. Could increase goodwill. Addressing timing issues with deductions is also key.
The ownership society idea aims to spread capital.
Right. Widespread ownership fosters citizenship, responsibility. Think land reforms, policies encouraging home ownership.
But risks there too, like housing bubbles.
Definitely need caution. But targeted support for lower-income home ownership can help. ESOPs are another angle, employee stock ownership.
Behavioral economics supports ESOP logic.
Seems to, yeah. Overall, policies dispersing ownership have likely contributed to equality and participation.
There's this idea of a great illusion in business today, like the pre-WWI illusion about war.
Angel argued war was irrational economically. The parallel is an assumption that businesses must be aggressive, even unethical, to succeed.
An unchallenged assumption.
That can breed resentment, hinder business. Angel's illusion fed a sense of self-actualization through war. Maybe we see echoes in corporate conquest ideas.
But excessive zeal for wealth isn't admired.
Not usually, no.
So how does aggression fit into commerce?
Montesquieu thought the spirit of commerce fosters positive traits unless wealth destroys that spirit. The environment matters.
Economic ties raise the cost of conflict.
Research supports that, and Montesquieu saw movable wealth, finance, as a deterrent to war due to consequences. A sophisticated economy can channel aggression constructively.
Wow. Okay, this deep dive into finance and the good society really unpacks a lot. It's clearly complex, multifaceted.
Absolutely, and it highlights the potential for finance to be a force for good if it's aligned with societal goals and guided ethically.
And it's always evolving, isn't it? Needs constant thought, innovation, adaptation.
Continuous work, definitely.
So for you, our learner, thinking about all these different roles, these debates, what single principle do you think is most vital, most crucial for making sure finance actually helps build that good society moving forward?
That's a great question to reflect on.
Definitely something to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.